husband, who was very lovely person, very careful person. He always cared about kids, about me, even if I wasn't work. He always supported me.
He was an idol. He was a person you really look up to. You know, you'd finish school and he'd be at home, like, you know, messing with something or like tinkering with something. He'd never be on the sofa just watching TV.
He was always very helpful. He was good to us. Cared a lot about our education, our future. Didn't care so much about himself and what he was doing. Like I say, his interests, anything like that, wasn't really his priority, it was his family. Dad was diverse in his hobbies. So one of his main hobbies was collecting old vinyls. He used to be a DJ in his teenage to early 20s. So that sort of transferred into collecting classic vinyls and looking for signed vinyls. And a lot of it was purchased through the car boots and charity shops and everything like that. As well as collecting his vinyls, he was very interested in planes, classic World War planes, as well as commercial airline planes. It was something he always aspired Oscar to do in the future, was to become a plane pilot for commercials. Originally in Poland, Dad worked for a building supplies company. He decided to move to England to provide for us for a better future. He worked at a steel pickling company. He would be mending things, setting up machines, things like that, so he was more of an engineer, which led him to do a course in London. He got his qualification. He started employment at IES by EMR. He was an electrical engineer there.
Well, it was a long time before we and the family actually knew what had happened in the accident. When they came to see me for the first time, they'd been given very little information about exactly what had taken place. And indeed, it was until the end of the inquest when we finally learnt exactly what had happened, and that was really difficult.
He was working night shifts when it happened, so we was all asleep. It would have been early hours of the morning. We heard sirens and someone knocked on the door. They asked us if there was anyone that could stay with the children because both my brothers were young at the time. There wasn't at the time, so they took Mum. Mum arranged for one of her friends to come and stay with the lads, and another police car come and pick me up. They drove me to QE with the sirens on, so I knew something was off.
So ultimately it was found that Greg had gone to work as normal that day. He'd only worked for them for less than 3 months when it happened, and part of his process was, as a relatively new member of the team, to do whatever was given to him. And he was sent up with another 2 colleagues to go and unblock a duct in the process of recycling, essentially recycling of car parts, high combustion process. And the chimney where the particles were being released had become blocked. This was a regular occurrence apparently, and employees were just sent up to go and unblock it by whatever means they thought.
When we got there, we got put in a room. We waited a little bit. The nurses came in to sort of tell us what had happened. Up at this stage, the police just said that there was an incident, Dad was involved, and that's sort of all we got. When the nurses came in, they told us in more details as to what happened, what sort of damages were sustained, and how severe the incident actually was. We got let into the room to see him, or at least what was left. We got to spend a little bit of time with him while he was on life support. When we got there, he was already on life support.
Greg went up with a metal rod, and the process was called rodding. He would put the rod down through the chimney, essentially, and was trying to dislodge the blockage of soot that built up within the machine. During that process, the soot suddenly dislodged, and it exploded, causing a very, very high temperature.
I couldn't remember nothing, because with that stress, it's like you have husband and 3 o'clock somebody wake you up and you haven't got husband, you haven't got dad for your kids. You become like single mom in one day. So Claire was the best person we can have on that time, because my English is not very good and we don't have nobody who was in the same situation, so we have to believe in Claire with everything, and she did everything.
There were many challenges throughout the course of the case. It was difficult from the family's perspective to have to deal with. Obviously, such an emotive time, their life has been turned absolutely upside down, and being able to support them in that was an absolute honour, to be honest. They're such a close family. They were fantastic in terms of how they approached the case, how they approached having to deal with such difficult issues themselves.
And I'm really grateful for everyone that did help us with getting to the stage we got to, with meeting Claire, and you could see it with her body language, with how she was, that she actually sort of saw the meaning behind it for us, not just the money.
And it was during the course of that inquest, which took many, many years to proceed and to get to the point of finalisation, that eventually we found that it wasn't just the employer who was potentially responsible here, but a whole line of other defendants, both individuals and companies, in a very complex corporate structure involved not only with the company itself, who Greg was employed with, but also with the particular machine that was being used at the time.
The future is a very unknown subject, as we sort of found out for ourselves. We tend to take it one step at a time, but do not hesitate anymore. We're all moved on in life, and normally this is where the family divides and the husband and wife stay at home, start doing the holidays. Us kids go off and start having our own kids and having our own families. But in our case, it's a little bit different. So we've all still got to be there for one another. And we will be there for one another for as long as we need to be.